Easy Explain on the Genealogy of Morals by Friedrich Nietzsche. Third essay, sections 10 through 22. Going to be covering the big, meaty middle of this third essay here. Again, the title of this third essay is What is the Meaning of Ascetic Ideals? We're still going with that investigation. But the reason I'm grouping these, a big middle of this essay together, sections 10 through 22, because throughout these sections that Nietzsche provides most of his criticism against the ascetic priest, right? This ideal, this value, this visual of the ascetic priest. There's a lot going on here. It is a very big chunk to condense, but I have pulled out 4 passages from throughout these sections. They're all a bit longer, they're all a bit bigger passages, but I think they do a really good job at, breaking this down, giving an easy explanation, giving a bit of a summary of what Nietzsche's really getting after here. So let's jump to section 12 for starters. And here, I think this is, it's a long passage, but I think it does a really good job of giving Nietzsche's perspective on this, kind of showing his style. It's very indicative of his style and his philosophical method of how he's going to approach this, deconstruct it, criticize it, and begin to move on from it. So let's take a look at what he says. Nietzsche says, "Henceforth, my dear philosophers, let us be on guard against the dangerous old conceptual fiction that posited a pure, willless, painless, timeless, knowing subject. Let us guard against the snares of such contradictory concepts as pure reason," it's a call to Kant there, "absolute spirituality," it's a call to Hegel there, and knowledge in itself. These always demand that we should think of an I that is completely unthinkable, an eye turned in no particular direction, in which the active and interpreting forces through which alone seeing becomes seeing something are supposed to be lacking. They're always demand of the eye an absurdity and a nonsense. Again, there's just a break here. It's a big passage, just going to keep going with it. He goes on to say that there is only a perspective seeing, only a perspective knowing. And the more affects we allow to speak about one thing, the more eyes, different eyes, we can use to observe one thing. The more complete our concept of this thing, our objectivity be. So what Nietzsche's getting at here is that if we are looking at these, high philosophers, these religious leaders, these ascetic priests, if they are telling us what is good, what is valuable, what is moral, and what is right, we are essentially they are doing the seeing of life for us, right? For Nietzsche, they only have their perspective, and that's all that anyone can really have, right? We all have our own perspective to see, to know, to live life, to experience, to learn. And Nietzsche's saying there's value in that. We all need that. We all need to hold to our own. And in fact, we can actually all come together with different perspectives, different eyes, different ways of knowing. And that's really how we get at the truth of a thing, the value of a thing, if there are real morals, right? That's how we'll get there. We won't get there from singular religious leaders. Let's go on to section 15, another pretty big one. Nietzsche says, "The priest alters the direction of resentment. For every sufferer instinctively seeks a cause for his suffering, more exactly an agent, still more specifically a guilty agent who is susceptible to suffering." Just pause here, right? We're seeing a lot of things coming into full form. So he's saying what's the role of the priest is to take this resentment of the lower class, right, of those who have been labeled as bad, and to redirect it, right? Because he's saying in human nature, everyone wants to understand why they are suffering. And we can't blame the higher class, at least that's not what the priest is saying we can do. He wants to redirect it. We want to be able to put guilt somewhere, right? That's our bad conscience. We want to be able to find it. So the priest is going to help us redirect it. But to where? So Nietzsche goes on, he says, "In short, some living thing upon which he can, on some pretext or other, vent his affects, actually or in effigy. For the venting of his affects represents the greatest attempt on the part of the suffering to win relief, anesthesia. The narcotic he cannot help desiring to deaden pain of any kind. This alone, I surmise, constitutes the actual physiological cause of resentment, vengefulness, and the like. A desire to deaden pain by means of affects." So we got to redirect this, right? We don't want to be in pain. We don't want to be in resentment. We want to get out of this. We want to get out of our guilt. And we're going to go to priests to help us find a place to put it. Let's move on to section 19. Here Nietzsche says, "The means employed by the ascetic priests that we have discovered up to now the general muting of the feeling of life, mechanical activity, the petty pleasure, above all, love of one's neighbor, herd organization, the awakening of the communal feeling of power, through which the individual is discontent with himself, is drowned in his pleasure and the prosperity of the community. So these are means of the priest to redirect this resentment, redirect this guilt, right? Here's a short list right here. Nietzsche goes on, these are by modern standards his innocent means in the struggle with displeasure. Let us now turn to the more interesting means, the guilty ones. Right? He's saying, sure, priests have gotten away with this, but where are they really at fault? Let's keep going with the same passage. They all involve one thing, some kind of an orgy of feeling, employed as the most effective means of deadening, dull, paralyzing, protracted pain. Hence, priestly inventiveness in thinking through this single question. How can one produce an orgy of feeling? Has been virtually inexhaustible. Right? So not only do you want to redirect guilt from people, you want them to feel great. You want them to feel overcome with feeling. We're just swelling with fullness and wholeness. It's almost like Nietzsche is saying that priests and ascetic leaders are deceiving people with a false self-overcoming, right? Like a false overcoming of these feelings of guilt and bad conscience. So let's go on to section 22. Let's wrap this up. Nietzsche says it is easy to see that the ascetic ideal has never and nowhere been a school of good taste, even less of good manners. At best, it was a school of hieratic manners. That is because its very nature includes something that is the deadly enemy of all good manners, lack of moderation, dislike of moderation. It itself is an ultimate extreme. Again, some Buddhistic elements here of Nietzsche, right? If you know anything about Buddhism and the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, the middle way. Nietzsche's saying here, asceticism is an extreme. It is not moderate by any means. It's an ultimate extreme. This isn't going to resolve your issues. It's only going to create more problems. In fact, he's saying it has created more problems. So those are 4 pretty big passages taken from sections 10 through 22, the real big middle of this third essay. But I hope we've painted a pretty good picture of Nietzsche's critique against the ascetic priest, the religious leader, and how what they're doing actually isn't helping people to get out from guilt and overcome themselves. One more part here. We're going to close out the third essay with the third part. But for now, I hope this helps.